Hi everyone, in today's video I want to show you how to make a piece of cheese using the voxel method. And yes, this is the first video I ever narrated, so please don't judge me too harshly. Leave a comment to let me know what do you think, give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's get started. Of all the primitives available in Cinema 4D, a cube is the most suitable for building our model. Select it and edit. Immediately give it a rectangular shape. Press C to make the object editable. Make one side narrower. Widen the opposite side. So, we now have the basic shape of our model. To make it more interesting, we will use the loop cut tool to make a few cuts. We will divide this side into 4 equal parts. One cut horizontally and 2 cuts along the length of the model. Next, we will start modeling the details of our model. Some forward, some backward. Details convey the object's story. You could skip this step, but the model would end up looking dull and unrealistic. Here, we'll dent it downwards. We'll create a dent on the sides, as this is likely where the cheese was cut. Also, the cheese may have melted slightly, so the top should be a little wider than the bottom. The middle will be the narrowest part. So, the model has been slightly improved. What do we do next? Now we need to convert our model into voxels. To do this, we select the volume builder and drag our cheese into it. Voila! Our model has been converted in voxels. However, the voxels are currently quite large, as the size is set to 10 cm. If we reduce this value, the model's shape will become more defined. You could use 2 cm or even 1. On slower computers, anything below 1 cm is not recommended. So, to start with, let's leave it at 5, which is the optimal size. For now, let's turn off voxel mode. They say that the better and higher the quality of the cheese, the more holes it should have. Our model will be no exception. You might be surprised, but we will be creating the holes using spheres. Add a sphere, set an arbitrary size, let's say around 30. To scale the number of spheres, make sure the sphere is selected, hold down the Alt key and click on the cloner. An array of 9 spheres appears, but that won't be enough, so let's add more along the Z-axis and Y-axis, and there we have our array ready. We will use this to create the holes. If we do this straight away, they will look very linear and unnatural. So make sure the cloner is selected and add a randomizer to it. In the Parameters tab, we can randomly alter the position of the objects currently in the cloner. We can also adjust other parameters: rotation, which we don't need right now, and size, which we will need. Select Uniform Size, choose the desired arrangement. Now let's add our cloner to the volume builder. We activate it and see that our spheres have also been converted into voxels. However, the spheres have merged with the model. To create holes, select the volume builder. We can see that the mode is currently union, so we need to change it to subtract. And now the outline of the piece of cheese is beginning to take shape. It looks pretty good. When adjusting the settings, you can also change the size of the sphere itself in the cloner. For a more detailed look, you could set it to 2 cm. To avoid having to move objects along different axes manually, you can select the preset random arrangement option in the randomizer. Go to the effector and select the most suitable option in seeds. This may take a while, so keep tweaking it until you are happy with the result. I finally managed to get a result that's more or less acceptable and that I'm happy with. However, it's not perfect, so we are going to improve it a little now. Select the sphere, hold down Ctrl and drag it downwards. Position the sphere where we want to create the recess. Reduce its size slightly. Drag it into the volume builder. By default, the sphere is in add mode. We will switch it to subtract. Move it down a little further. Now do the same on this side. Make sure the sphere is selected. Hold down Ctrl and drag. Position it somewhere here. drop it into the volume builder in exactly the same way. Set the mode to subtract. This gives us 2 additional indentations. There are no additional settings for the spheres in the cloner, but there are for individual spheres. Tick the perfect primitive box. I'd also add a small sphere somewhere here or there. The sequence will remain the same. As we can see, there are very sharp corners. So let's smooth them out now. To do this, we won't use subdivision surface. Select Volume Builder and use the SDF Smooth tool. Click and we can see that the corners on the voxel model have been smoothed out. I think the smoothing is quite strong, so to reduce the effect in the operator we will select mean instead of Gaussian. I'll increase the iteration value, and we can also play around with the voxel distance. So we end up with the model with smooth edges. Next, let's double check that the settings for the objects in the volume builder are correct. We are now going to convert the model back from its voxel state to a polygonal one. To do this, we'll need the volume mesher. We'll import the entire volume builder into the mesher. Great, now we have got some polygons. But if we press the NB keys, we'll see that the polygonal mesh has a huge number of incorrect polygons. In the mesher, we can see what the sliders do. I usually leave it at 15%. What does this adjustment achieve? The number of polygons is reduced, but the smoothness of the contours is also reduced, and the mesh becomes uneven. The model looks dull and unrealistic. Let's check if we are happy with everything. There is a very sharp corner here, but we will edit it later. Just in case, let's make a copy. Group them. Merge all the projects. In case you didn't know, press Shift plus V to open the project's viewport settings and in the HUD tab enable viewport statistics. Now we can see how many triangles our model has. If we divide this number by 4, we will get the total number of polygons because the square polygon consists of two triangles with two sides. We will reduce the total count, but first let's fix the mesh. We will use the remesher. Place your object inside it. You can see the process has started. Look, we've got a neat, uniform mesh. It might not be perfect, but it's comparable to the previous one. Now, if we are happy with it, we click Connect Object plus Delete. Let's take another look at our model. We have a total of 226,000 triangles. For simple static rendering, the model is generally suitable. There are models with as many as 1 million polygons. But if you go on to use the model in more complex compositions or clone it several times, this will, of course, significantly increase the load on your PC. And I think that at the moment not everyone is likely to have a powerful PC. So let's try to improve the situation. We'll use the polygon reduction tool. We'll need to reduce the count from 226,000 by 90%. You can choose a different value, but I'll use the default. Open the mesh view via N plus B and drag the model into polygon reduction. Note that the mesh has completely broken up and now consists of triangles, but the total count has also decreased. It was 226,000, now is just 22,000. As promised, the count has been reduced by 90%. You could try 80%, but never mind. Let's see what we get now. Merge everything. As you probably guessed, we will be using remesher to fix our mesh. We'll transfer the model to remesher, waiting, and we get a more or less smooth model. We've got a good mesh, but we've got one artifact here, and it looks fine here. And here too. Let's take a look. All in all, our model now has 42,000 polygons after the remesher, which added a few polygons but smoothed out the edges. In any case, that's better than 226,000. You can still experiment a bit more, but I'm happy with the model as it is at this stage. I mentioned earlier that I would be making some edits here. Let's do something using the brush and points. Call up the brush using the M+C case. This tool has many modes. Select smooth, then use the middle mouse button to reduce the surface size. You can also edit in model view mode. Let's make some adjustments. At this stage, you can use the brush to adjust any part of the model however you like. The model is almost ready. You can give this area another brush stroke. That's it. I'm happy with everything now and we can move on to creating the material. To add a material, go to the Material Manager and click the plus. Immediately label what the material represents and apply it to the model. This way you can visualize the result while editing the material. In Texture, you can select any shader for additional effects. Only one can be active at a time. To add multiple shaders, use Layers. Go into it and here you can add a large number of shaders, combining them with blending modes. Let's add a gradient here, change its type to 2dB so that the color transitions from dark to light, from bottom to top. Set the colors as shown. Add another noise shader. Change the noise type. And to ensure the image looks correct, when combining noise and the gradient, we need to use the gradient's colors. Change the blending mode to multiply and to reduce the opacity slightly to 70%. It looks pretty good. But we can see that the material isn't rendering correctly. This is due to the UV unwrap. We won't redo it completely, but we'll fix this situation as follows. In the UV edit window, we can see that the UV unwrap is a bit of a mess. Select a single polygon, press Ctrl A and in the Projection tab, click Frontal. This will be enough to prevent the material from appearing distorted. We could cut it up and do UV mapping, but in this example, there is no need for that. All in all, I think you have grasped the basics of building a model using voxels, and to reinforce what you've learned, I suggest you create a couple of slices and, say, a small cube of cheese, so your model doesn't feel a bit lonely. So I've got 2 slices and 2 small pieces, which I've labeled. Let's start putting the composition together. Let's add a floor. Let's add a background as well. To avoid the horizon line getting in the way, you can turn it off. Note that to prevent an object from floating in mid-air, you can manually adjust its position relative to the surface, rotate it, etc. However, I usually use freefall simulation to ultimately fix the realistic position of objects relative to a solid surface. In our case, that is the floor. Let's apply the collider body tag to the floor. For the model, we will use the rigid body tag. Hold down Ctrl and copy the tag to the remaining cheese object. Let's lift them up to the starting position. And let's run the simulation. Oops. Let's adjust the position slightly. Let's try again. Looks good. Now we need to lock the object's positions by removing the text from them. Next, let's add a camera. Set the desired exposure. To lock the camera and avoid accidentally disturbing the positions, we will use the protection tag. Now we can continue working with the object as we please, and if we wish, return to the camera without any issues. Let's choose a background color. I won't bother with complex textures. I'll just use a plain one. We will apply it to the background and the floor. There is a quirk here. The floor ends up darker than the background, and a seam may be visible with rendering. To make the floor and background blend together, we need to apply the composition render tag to the floor and enable the required option. Now let's add some lighting. Our composition will feature several light sources. Let's start by setting up the main light. To ensure the light source is always positioned relative to the model, regardless of where you move it, you can use targeting via null object. Add a null object, then add a target tag to the light source via the context menu. Drag the null object into the target field. We can see that our light source will now always face to the null object, in this case the center of the composition. Let's add shadow to our main light. Now in camera view we will set the most suitable position for the light source. Hold down Ctrl and create an additional light source. Let's name them straight away. In the additional light we will remove the shadows and reduce the intensity slightly. We need it to light up this side. We will leave it at 40%. Let's increase the intensity of the main light to 120%. We also need to create a background light falling from above. To do this, we will use a spotlight. Move it upwards. It will be easier to orientate visually. Let's lower the intensity as it shouldn't be too bright. We will start with it at 30% and leave it there. We need one more light source to interact with the environment. Select ambient occlusion. To avoid overexposure, reduce the intensity to around 16%. So we now have a lighting system. We can add other sources, but there must be at least 3 light sources. To see where the shadow will fall, go to Options and Enable Shadow. You will then see in real time how the shadow falls. Raise the main light slightly and try to find the best position. Now we just need to choose the render settings. We go into the settings and see that the standard render mode is selected by default. But this won't work for us, because we need to create a beautiful image that mom is sure to love. So we switch the physical render type and add ambient occlusion and global illumination. In ambient occlusion, we will change the maximum ray length to 35 and, to avoid harsh shadows, adjust the color in the gradient. In the physical sampling settings, we'll select automatic, as everyone has a different PC spec and the program will decide for itself what works best. We will also adjust the parameters below. In options, we change the following settings. We also remove the default light. Now we need to decide what image format we require. I'll use the standard Full HD resolution and select log ratio. Let's name our present here. To ensure the test render runs quickly, let's reduce the aspect ratio by a factor of 3. It looks quite good, but I'd add some reflections to the cheese. And let's make the background material a bit darker. Let's try again. In the render history window, you can compare different results. Let's move the main model a little to make some space here. And let's try adding a bit of shine to the floor. Let's increase the lighting a little. Once everything is ready for the final render, let's organize our objects. Select all the light sources and use Alt-G to place them in a group. Group the cheese models separately. Let's group the floor and background as well. We'll leave the camera for now. This will help you manage your project more neatly and speed up the workflow in the future. Also, if you are handing over finished project to someone else, this attention to details will show you that you are a good professional. I couldn't resist and decided to add some new object from the previous video. You can add new pre-made object from another open project or via merge project. I positioned the berries using the freefall simulation we have used before. The key feature here was using our cheese object as a collider bodies. Everything else is as usual. I hope you find this video useful, and please let me know in the comments what do you think of this format with a step-by-step guide and what could be improved. Thanks for watching and see you next time.